One moment.
We up to chapter 2?
I believe so, but 1 second, I shall put it up. Okay, there we are. And there we are. It takes a minute to connect all these things. Okay, good. And good. And good. Okay. Well, it's going. It's going. And here we are. Okay. And this, and I'm going to find the place. And Adam Ki Akriv. Okay. Give me 1 second. Okay, yeah, so the site is on. It's learnchassidus.com. It's learnchassidus.com, and I'm going to put it up in 1 second. There we are. Okay, and it's up. And we're going to do a share screen, and everyone can see it. Okay, and you can also find it. Okay, good. Okay, share screen, and there it is. And where we're up to is chapter 2, and we had discussed the problem of inconsistent inspiration. In other words, that sometimes you have it and sometimes you don't. And we're trying to understand this idea that the person has to be able to take that and connect with an awakening from below, because ultimately the goal, creation, is a gift the first time around, but afterwards, what Hashem wants is our efforts. Okay. But if you don't add your own effort, it just goes away. And that's okay. So now we're up to chapter 2. Chapter 2. And this process to seize the initiative when we attain an awakening, and there always will be in our lives, there'll always be those moments we're inspired, we want to come close. So this is the meaning. V'zeu Adam ki yakrav mikem, when an Adam will bring from among you. Kine b'chinas Adam, the level of Adam is when we say that the human being is Adam el Elyon, is in a mirror of above. So the Adam that the human being is, the true Adam, is the above. And on the likeness of the throne was the likeness of the parents of Adam. In truth, God does not have any attributes of the sphero, of the fundamental divine elements of creation. But he expresses himself in the 10 spheros, which in turn are divided up into the 248 limbs of the king, which are the positive mitzvahs, because the mitzvahs are Hashem's will. And when you do a mitzvah, you essentially, the same way that your mind causes your limbs to move. So when you do a mitzvah, godliness is enclosed in that particular mitzvah. And those 248 are made up of various combinations of the 10 sphero. so that he should illuminate the souls of the Jewish people in all the worlds. For Azai Nikra Kamara Adam, when you have the Sphirot at the highest world, at Atzilah, when God chooses to express himself in the Sphirot, so then we say Kamara Adam. And this is what Adam Ki Yakriv Mikem, that Hashem condenses his power and appears within these limited parameters in order that we give of ourselves. And that is the purpose of creation, as discussed at length last week. And this is the measure of the human form, which means to say that the whole idea of spirit and worlds and all that is Hashem condensing himself into that level in order that we exist. That an Adam, so it begins by saying Adam ki Yakriv, when an Adam will come close, because Yakriv means not just to offer, but to come close, which means to say when God condenses and limits his power and reveals his being within the limited realm of the 10th Sphirot. Because once you have that, through many, many chaining down of the worlds, you get to a level of divine energy that can actually appear in our minds and inspire us, an enormous contraction. Why would God come close to us and and clothe himself in something that can be expressed in little old us? Hainu, this is the meaning of the Isros, the Lake of Awakening from above, from the level of the supernal man. To bring the heart of a person here to Hashem. So in other words, why is there the image of Adam on the throne? Why is there all the worlds? In order that ultimately we should live as extraordinarily limited beings, yet within that limitation to be able to shine a light of divinity that doesn't destroy us, but inspires us just enough for us to realize that we have to do something. Ukamosha Kosav, as it's written, Kamayim aponim leponim, Kain levodim lodim. Mishle, it says, as the water reflects the face. In other words, if you smile at your image in a lake, the image will smile back at you. And if you frown, it'll frown. So too is one person's heart to the other, that if you, generally speaking, if you show pleasantness to someone, they'll show pleasantness back. But over here, why do we say Adam twice? Because there's the supernal Adam, the Ein Sof, as he limits himself in the parameters of Adam, in order that our heart be awakened to him. Because otherwise we can just drift through life and never think about Hashem. So every once in a while, the goal is that we should use our own heart and mind and action to come close to Hashem on our own. When Hashem sees we're drifting, he sends us a revelation that we can handle. And that's the awakening from above. Adam, which is going on Hashem as he's enclosed in the 10 spheros, Yakriv, he will bring close of you. He'll bring something of you closer to wake you up. Yakriv is nefesh Adam. He'll bring the soul to Hashem, but the goal isn't to have a free ride. So the next step is after it says Yakriv. Therefore, it says Adam, the man, when he will bring of you, and not a man of you will bring. If you use the proper grammar, the interpretation would be only according to its plain meaning. That the person below will draw close. But when it says Ki Yakriv Mikem, it comes to hint the concept explained above, because the Torah is written in multiple layers. So how do we read this pasuk in its purest grammatical form? Adam, that who is called Adam. In other words, the Ein Sof, as he's enclosed in the spheres and the worlds. Ki Yakriv, who will draw close, Mikem, from you. He will draw something of you closer in order that what? Ulechein nemar ki yakriv, in the singular, the koil adam elyon shuechad, it goes on the supernal adam, which is Hashem, as Hashem is known to us, which is one. Because really, if it was talking about people, it should say Anoshim. When men shall bring of you a carbon, lots of people bring carbon. But again, at a deeper level, Hashem is trying to hint to us in the Torah that Adam, that God, as he expresses himself in the limited world, will draw close mikem of you, any one of you, because there's lots of you.
So this connected to charity. Like if you bring an offering of yourself, do you make this connection automatic?
Well, so here we're saying that first of all, Hashem brings an offering, brings you close. First, Hashem brings you close. Then you have to bring something of your own, or it'll go away. In other words, Adam ki yakar miken, and we'll see later from the animals, from the sheep and the cattle and so on. That's a separate thing. Adam ki yakar miken is God reaching out to you. Mina behema, mina boker, and so on. From the beasts, that's what you got to do. Valderech shema shekasa berabos, a medrash rabba on Bereshis al pasuk. Hein hadam kachan mimenu. That man has become like one of us after eating from the tree. Ki yechidah shel like the uniqueness of the world. Hainu Adam Elyon, the one and only God of the world. So once Adam ki yakriv, once Hashem reaches out and brings us close. So what do we have to do? Afterwards, it says, Mina behema, from the beasts, from the cattle, sheep, and goats, bring your offering. Zel b'chinas, this is the awakening from below. This is the carbon that the person below has to bring. And therefore it says, you shall bring in the plural because it goes on the whole Jewish people. Otherwise, it should either say, if we're using an individual as an example, right? It should say, Adam ki yakar mikem takriv eskor, you shall bring your carbon singular, or it should all be in the plural. But the switch from the singular to the plural is grammatically incorrect. In other words, if I say, all of you should show up, we should show up at the meeting, and at the meeting we will discuss X. Or I can say every one of you should be at the meeting, and you singular should be in English. It doesn't, but you singular, thou should be prepared to discuss
the budget or whatever.
Right? Yeah. So, but here we start with the singular and end with the plural. Why? Because the beginning, the Adam is not you. The Adam is Hashem, who's drawing you close. Then you shall bring your carbon. Then if you want it to last, if you want it to have meaning, then you have to lift up from below. You got to do the work. And this is the level of the carbon, the person below must bring. Because it goes on the Jewish people. So what is Hashem telling us? Hashem is giving us good advice. This is the good advice from Hashem. Blessed be He. Immediately, there's a time of goodwill. Immediately when you feel inspired, when there is drawn from above, an awakening to stir the soul of the person, take of umiyad, you should also begin to awakening from below, to train and transform the character traits of the animal soul through work on one's behavior and in prayer. In other words, when you're inspired, you should immediately use that opportunity to think about what needs improving in your character and to pour effort into prayer, rather than simply accept just let the inspiration happen and then it goes away. So the moment that you feel inspired, you should start doing things that are your effort. And that's Takrivas Korbancha. Adam ki yakar mikem. When God draws close to you, then you bring yourself along. And how do you bring yourself? From the animals, from the cattle, from the sheep, from the goats, as will be explained. And this process, this reciprocal cyclical process, is as it's written, which is, as you know, a parable, the relationship of Hashem Jewish people. Mashcheni, draw me close, pull me up. Limshoch is to pull something up with a rope. Acharecha narutza, so then we will run after you. If you pull me up out of the mud, then I'll keep climbing. It's no, it's in other words, once you boost me, then I can keep going. But a person is sometimes stuck, and and when you're stuck, you need that you need that extra help, that extra push. But then Acharecha Nerutza will run after you of our own speed. And note, when you pull someone with a rope, you're doing all the work. When they run, they're doing the work. So Mashcheni, pull me up with your power, then Acharecha Nerutza, then I will run with my power. Meaning, Kashertim Shecheni, when you pull me up spiritually from waking from above, immediately Acharecha Nerutza will run after you to one's own effort in refining the animal soul. And so therefore that's the time to work on whatever you need to work. Avlam lo yisameitz, but if a person will not work hard to use that inspiration, that boost to keep going, to serve Lavar Nefesh Abamis, to refine the animal soul, that even though after Shenim Shachas Ras Leila, after the awakening from above happens, the Ora Nefesh is to awaken the person's divine soul. Lo Yizakiyim Vasmada. It will not last, and it will not be constant. In other words, it'll go away. Avo kasher miyad, when the Adam Elyon, when the supernal man, when God Yaakov Mikem brings you close as an offering. Dainu, it is an awakening from above, for its whole purpose is to awaken Yisros Latata, your efforts. Then immediately you should begin to bring your korban, Mina Behema, and then it will last. And what is this korban that you bring? Is from the beast. Mashein Kain, Adam Ki Yaakov korban Mikem. When Hashem comes close, he's drawing you close. What are you supposed to bring to Hashem? Your animal. Hashem's drawing you close. He's awakening your godly soul. What are you supposed to bring? You're supposed to. Hashem is drawing the you close. The you is the godly soul. What do you have to bring? The animal soul. And the idea is that you're going to take the domain, the space of the animal soul, and you're going to, that's the awakening from below, where you take the time and effort that comes from the animal soul, one's intellect, one's body, and so on, and you bring it close to Hashem. As we explained above, in every single Jew. There's a godly soul and an animal soul. Now, when Hashem draws close, which is the Yisros of the Leil awakening from above, which is drawn from above to awaken the person's soul below, this awakening, this push comes to the godly soul. Why? Because the godly soul is always synced with its source in the Hashem. So if Hashem wants it, since Hashem doesn't do anything by force, so since the Ein Sof wants you to change, it awakens the godly soul. In other words, normally, because we have all these habits and patterns, and we listen to the animal soul so often, and we use the animal soul so often, the godly soul is covered over in the animal soul, and because we don't let it in so much, it has a very quiet voice. The awakening from above is like a pulse of energy. It gives it, all of a sudden, the godly soul has a much bigger voice and shines much brighter than you let it shine until now. But that only is that temporarily pushes away the inertia of the animal soul. But when that light goes away, the space the animal soul occupied will refill, unless you take that opportunity to start refining the animal soul. And this is the idea. So this awakening from above, since God doesn't change the order of things, it only reaches the the godly part of you. The candle of Hashem, in other words, the divine light, is the soul of a person. In other words, which is the level of Adam that's within us. As it says, let us make Adam in our form and our likeness. So it's the part of us that's already godly that is strengthened and gets a bigger voice with this awakening. The godly soul is a natural love because of its root and where it comes from. It's hidden. It has to be taken from its hidden state. So through this awakening, this comes out of the hidden state that it's nullified to Hashem, like a candle before a torch. In place of a big torch, you don't notice the little candle. So when it's revealed in the divine soul, so this temporarily influences the person, because all of a sudden this light is shining throughout you. But it's only external. It hasn't changed you. It's merely temporarily illuminated a dark place. It's like a piece of wood that you can pour a fire lighter on it and light it. But if the wood isn't prepared, it's not properly cut up. It's not prepared to burn. So then the lighter fluid will burn out, and the wood will remain as it is. It's only when you chop up the wood and let the lighter fluid permeate it, and then it begins to burn on its own, that the wood is transformed from wood to fire. So that light comes, but it only temporarily illuminates the person. But the godly animal soul, that already has come down and is, in other words, it has descended, as we explained, with the world of Torah, and is included of good and evil. And most of it is bad. We can't say that it has a natural love for Hashem. In other words, there's always a bit of good in the animal soul, but on its own, since all mundane activities, even if they're permitted, that are done solely for the purpose of the benefit of one's body, also conceal godliness. They're also negative temporarily. So most of the animal soul's behavior on its own is bad. There are sparks of good, natural compassion and so on. It talks about in the Tanya. And therefore, even when there comes an awakening from above, it doesn't directly affect the animal soul in the body. In other words, it might temporarily illuminate them, and your body and mind will go along with this inspiration, but they're not fundamentally changed. So they're pushed away by the force of this light, but as soon as the light goes away, the darkness returns. And quoting Koheles, because even though the spirit of Adam, which goes up to connect to Hashem, nevertheless, if you don't sort of get the godly soul to transform the animal soul, they're just in their respective places. So nevertheless, the spirit of the animal descends below. In other words, you can be inspired, but unless you actually start changing the nature of the animal soul, it'll go back to where it was. But this is the work you must do yourself, to refine your animal soul. In other words, that's something you have to do yourself. You have to have the right intention when you engage in mundane activities. You have to convince the animal soul to make time for Torah and prayer. You have to push away the animal soul's propensity to concern itself with its matters and instead occupy your brain space and your words with Torah, with prayer, and so on. And if you refine your animal soul, it's called Kamo Oved, is called someone who serves Hashem. Kamo Orus Avudim, like processed animal sins, are called worked skins. He works them and fixes them. In other words, and this, by the way, is in regards to the laws of Shabbos too. Avoda means creative, transformative work. When you light a candle, it becomes fire. You grind wheat, it becomes flour. You tan skins, they become leather. You have to do something something somewhat creative. That's what avoda is. Avoda is the transformation of something through the application of effort. So the same way that tanning leather involves, removing all the junk and changing the nature of the hide till it becomes leather, so too, you have to work with the animal soul in such a way that you change its nature and you change its behavior.
But if you're using the analogy of a korban, that results in the total destruction of the behemoth. And here we're talking about refining, not destroying. The Alter Rebbe's definition of a tzaddik is one who is completely nullified, suppressed, destroyed, if you will, his nefesh behemoth. But we're talking about two different things. Is he talking about the process by which someone becomes a tzaddik?
No.
It's my understanding that that's a gift from Hashem.
But no, but that's the point. In other words, when you bring an animal on the altar, the animal is transformed into godliness. In other words, the animal goes up. Literally, it's transformed to a godly state. It's not merely burnt. And that's why the fire of the Mizbeach was special and unique and so on. So too over here, the animal soul is slaughtered. The life force, its enthusiasms are taken from it, and it becomes included in godliness. Just like the animal fuels the fire on the altar, the animal soul fuels the fire of the godly soul. So there's constantly more behemoth to bring, but each time that we use our energy and enthusiasm and and property and so on to serve Hashem, when it could be used for our own aggrandizement, the time could be used for our own purposes. When our character and behavior reflects Hashem's will rather than what is convenient and utilitarian benefit to us. So that is the transformation of the animal into something godly. So in other words, the korban does not cease to exist. It becomes godliness. It's returned to its source in godliness. That's why, it's such a big deal. In other words, when the last week's of Torah, where they saw the angel go up in the fire of the altar, that's literally what happens. That the physical is transformed into something spiritual, and that's the true with the behemoth. That whatever part of the animal, the whole animal that is burnt on the altar, that is becoming. It is returning it to godliness. It is becoming godly, except by your effort. So too with the person that when you indeed are ceasing to be that part of your animal soul, ceasing to be animalistic, ceasing to be self-serving. What's the nature of an animal soul? That every animal is functioning on the level of self-preservation or the preservation, however it's programmed. But the animal is concerned with the here and now. Animals do not think of Olam Haba. They do not, they do not think of of morals, except to the extent they're programmed, perhaps, to, for one animal to sacrifice itself for the others and so on. But so the animal is about the preservation of the self as defined by the body. That's what it is. So to the extent that energy, resources, and so on are used for a holy purpose, that is the offering and transformation, because that part of the animal soul has been transformed. It's now godliness. So in other words, because a korban is not destruction, it's an elevation. Okay, now, and in order for a person to serve Hashem, that is solely about your work. Hashem might inspire you and so on, but it's solely about your own work. Ukamayim Razal, like our sages say in Tractate Midah, regarding the angel that is appointed for conception. This drop, what will be the destiny of it? And it goes through a long list: strong or weak, wise or simple, rich or poor. God did not say whether the person will be righteous or wicked. That's entirely up to the person. So every person, the degree of their righteousness or wickedness is entirely of their own doing. And therefore, as if it were, since Hashem set the world up that way, he can inspire you, but he can't do the work for you. When God brings you close, that's the godly soul. But your sacrifices from the animal, to refine the animal soul, to tame and transform it. And this is done through contemplation of Hashem's greatness during prayer, as much as your mind can, to create a fiery love for Hashem, also in these animal souls. We discussed at length last week the process of prayer and contemplation of Hashem's presence in the history, in the human being, in the physical world, in the malachim, and so on, should cause a love of Hashem also in the animal soul. When the animal soul grasps, with that aspect of you grasp that its entire being and purpose, and indeed its very preservation, comes from Hashem. So in other words, once you use your mind and your body, that's why we have to say the words and so on, but once we get absorbed in this thought, so the animal soul itself must recognize where its bread is buttered. In other words, where its life force comes from. And that causes the transformation, because if the life force comes from Hashem, then because everything wants to live, everything wants to exist. And this is a process of convincing the animal soul that its life is from Hashem. And once we do that, it'll obviously come along for the ride and do what it needs to do in order to come close to Hashem. But that's only possible. The awakening from above doesn't do that, because it only comes about when you use your physical mind and your physical body, and you do the things you resolve to do during prayer, which co-opt the animal soul for godly purposes. So that co-option is the transformation of the animal soul, that using it for godly purposes. But this only comes about, in other words, you can make the animal soul do things, but for the animal soul, as if it were, to become willingly part, to become enthusiastic, that's only by the effort you take in refining yourself. And the more one makes an effort in prayer to actually understand that all the ideas that prayer deals with, which many of them deal with every day, all the brachas of Shemona Esrei deal with everyday mundane things, precisely because the goal is for the animal soul to recognize that it is nothing but godliness.
And Rabbi, what is the difference then between intuition and godly inspiration?
Intuition comes from you and it comes from within the person. It could be entirely mental. In other words, it's not necessarily godly. Intuition can be about perfectly regular things. The inspiration is where a person is specifically driven to come close to Hashem, is specifically driven to engage in godly activity. It might be experienced as intuition, but intuition can be many things. But awakening from above is specifically a strong yearning and desire to come close to Hashem in a way that hitherto you have not. That's the key element. So it may express itself as something intuitive, but what it is a very specific feeling. And this is the feeling we're talking about. However, in order for one's meditation, one's thought, one's act of prayer, which is this process of getting the animal soul to recognize, it's only possible if the animal soul is listening. If your bull is running through the china shop, it's not listening. First, you have to harness it and get it to pull the plow. Then it'll do what you want it to do. So first, there needs to be the control the three garments of the soul: thought, speech, and action, by turning away from bad and doing good. In other words, as long as the animal soul is doing its thing and pursuing what it desires. So first you have to stop it from pursuing what it desires. You have to stop it from, both in the forbidden and the permitted, from going its own way. Once you don't let it have what it wants, once you harness it, then you can change it. But it's like a beast. The first you have to harness it, then you can make it work. Then you come to the transformation that comes about through prayer. And that's one of the reasons we give tzedakah before prayer, because tzedakah, among other things, is the act of taking away the animal soul's benefit and what's good for it, right? And giving it to someone else, giving it for a holy purpose. In other words, the tzedakah is and more than that, when you earn money, your whole being is put into it. So, the animal soul isn't interested in its hard-earned money going to some holy cause. So by giving tzedakah, part of what you're doing is you're taking what your whole animal soul has been invested in and using it for a holy purpose. And that is a process of harnessing the animal soul. So first you have to harness the animal, then you can make it do what you want. But the first thing is to control it and not let it go where it wants. You have to let it go where you, the godly soul, wants. That's step one. Then you can get it to do transformative work.
Some of what the animal soul wants is necessary for survival.
But that's exactly what the Rambam says about, in all your ways you shall know him. A person can eat, drink, sleep, and do business in order that you be healthy and support your children. Or a person can eat, drink, sleep, and do business whether you'll be healthy in order to serve Hashem and support your children in order that they serve Hashem. And that changes that often changes the calculus. Granted, you can make a case for one cookie, but you really need the second. Or for that matter, once I see that I have sufficient resources for what I need, am I going to make myself crazy trying to make more money that I don't need? In other words, it's one thing, you engage in business and sometimes you're very successful. So God, Hashem wants you to do good things with that. But where it makes no difference what a person's financial state is, but when they have sufficient for their needs, they're constantly looking for more. So that is the greed of the animal soul. And that's what needs to be suppressed. That's when you harness and say, no, Baruch Hashem, I'm making a living. I have what I need. I don't need extra stuff. So now I'll make time for minyan and Torah study and so on. There are many things this way, I could, everyone needs a little bit of relaxation. but I can spend more time than necessary entertaining myself. The animal soul, wants to stand and trade funny stories beyond one's psychological need for the odd funny stories. You tell it, no, we're going to show now, and so on. And so you first have to stop it from doing what it wants, then you can make it do what you want. And that's the point of the transformation only comes after the work. And there's two kinds of work. One is transformation. But before that, in other words, it's all good and fine to say words that tell the animal soul that everything is driven by Hashem. But if the animal soul is doing its thing and your actions and your choices don't reflect this idea, you let it go what it wants to do. So then it's not hearing what you're saying at all. Only when you stop it from having what it wants and say, why can't I have this? Why can't I do this? Then you, as if it were explained to yourself why you can't. But as long as it gets what it wants, all the explanation is meaningless because it's not listening. So Iskafia is getting the animal soul to understand that it has to live a Gesapla transformation is the process of then teaching it. Okay.
It's like putting blinders on the animal, and then also at the same time you're packing a load on its back.
Right.
So it can
Well, it first has to stop looking all around and
then do the avoda. Do the work.
there you go. Yeah. See, now we don't use animals for our work, so
Yeah,
we've lost sight of the
Still a kosher
of this
animal.
particular we've lost sight of this particular parable.
Apple or whatever that is, we use the computers.
Right. Okay. So that finishes chapter 2. We will see you hopefully before then, but next week we'll continue with
Yeah.
chapter 3. And let's see. Okay. Yeah,
Thank you,
good.
Rabbi.
And we have the thing for next week. Okay.
Thank you.
Remember, we're
Goodbye.
in the small, take care. Have a good week, everyone. We're in the small show.